world. President Putin, the president says, Russia and Iran are responsible for backing Animal Assad. Big price to pay. Open area immediately for medical help and verification. Another humanitarian disaster for no reason whatsoever. Absolutely sick.
Here to weigh in, Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus. Professor, great to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
And important timing to get your perspective first on this breaking news coming out of Syria and the president's initial response there in his tweet this morning, sounding very direct at Russia, but in particular, Vladimir Putin. What is your response, and how should we move forward from here?
Well, I think the president has no choice. He must respond, and I think he will respond. He won't make the tragic mistake that President Obama, for whom I voted, made, and that is creating a red line, then violating it, essentially inviting the Russians and the Iranians to come in by creating a vacuum. And these deaths are horrible and tragic. Don't expect the UN to do anything about it. They're busy worrying about people trying to cross the fence from Gaza and condemning Israel for just defending itself, but they won't do anything to stop this horrible killing of children and women, deliberate, willful targeting of women and children. The United States has to do something about it. We're the only game in town.
In fact, pardon me, Alan, but the president tweeted again in the last moment and mentions that red line. President saying, if President Obama had crossed his stated red line in the sand, the Syrian disaster would have ended long ago. Animal Assad, the second time he's called him Animal Assad, would have been history. He's making the point you made a moment ago. I was in the briefing room at the White House when President Obama said, there's a red line for me would be Assad using chemical weapons. Then he used those chemical weapons, and Barack Obama did nothing.
And, well, he didn't do anything. He didn't do nothing. He arranged for a deal where Assad promised, on his word of honor, that he would give up all the chemical weapons, and we believed him.
Right.
And you know, we have to learn a lesson from that, and learn a lesson about Iran. Promises from dictators are worthless. We have to see action. We have an obligation in the name of humanity to prevent these killings from taking place.
And we have already, right? The last chemical attack in Syria, President Trump did respond with airstrikes. Do you think he should do something similar this time? When you talk about action, what does that mean? Well,
what he did last time is bomb the airports from which the barrel bomb planes had come. That's at least the minimum of what he has to do. But there has to be red lines that clearly indicate that if this continues to happen, if he continues to kill civilians, there has to be an international response. He has to be held responsible. The International Criminal Court in The Hague has to gear up. This is something that we just can't let happen. We've seen too many mass killings, deliberate mass killings in our century, and we just can't let it continue. I think this president will stand strong against that, and I hope he can stop this guy. Nobody else has stopped him.
Yeah, we're seeing these horrific photos of these children. Many of them have been killed, 70 killed so far. At least 500 have been injured.
And deliberate. They're not collateral deaths. They're deliberate, willful killing of civilians in order to recapture that area which is in rebel control. That's not the way you fight wars today.
Yeah, another big story we want to get to. We've been talking about whether President Trump will do a one-on-one interview with Robert Mueller. Is that a perjury trap? Now James Comey is going out with his book tour, and actually an ex-FBI agent is saying he could be walking into a perjury trap. Watch this.
Half of the country fervently believes that when he comes out with this book, there is going to be indisputable evidence there that is going to lead to the president's either indictment or potentially impeachment hearings. James Comey is putting himself into a perjury trap position. He's going to be talking about things, meaning his interactions with the president. He's going to set himself up to purposefully or unwittingly saying something that's not consistent with what he's going to have told the special prosecutor.
Well, Counselor, what say you?
Well, he has to learn a little bit more law. If you say something unwittingly that turns out to be inconsistent with what you said before, that's not perjury. Let's not go down the road of criminalizing political differences, even with people we disagree with. If you don't like what Comey wrote, don't read his book. Write a bad review. Look, I wonder if he even mentions why he felt he had to launder leaked information through a Columbia professor instead of having the courage to stand stand up in front of the TV cameras and say, "This is me speaking." I wonder if he addresses that issue in the book, because the head of the FBI, who's in charge of stopping leaks, shouldn't be conducting leaks and laundering them through professors.
Well, whether it's in the book, he will likely be asked about it when he does his book tour next week.
I hope so.
Do you think he could be in trouble, or does he have to be thoughtful about everything that comes
He's
out of his
going to be
mouth?
thoughtful. He's not going to commit perjury. You know, this idea of throwing around perjury and criminal charges against anybody you don't like. I don't like it when it's done against Democrats. I don't like it when it's done against Republicans. We have to reserve the criminal law only for the most extreme, willful, deliberate violations of existing statutes. They're not doing that with Trump now. They're talking about collusion. Find me collusion in the statute books. You can't find it. You can't just make up crimes and hope that they exist if you don't like somebody. And people are doing that on both sides of the aisle.
Well, we will not be launching perjury charges against you because of Trumped Up, a great book that's out there. People should pick it up.
Yeah.
Alan
Always
Dershowitz.
good to get your perspective.
Thank
Great to
you.
have on
Thanks
this
for coming
morning.
in. Coming up, the anti-sanctuary movement is sweeping across California now. Elected leaders finally